Ladies and gentlemen, I hereby proclaim that Keon Ellis is the new face of two-way contracts in the NBA. His success story continued tonight with a dominant performance in New Orleans, leading the Sacramento Kings to their third straight win. We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. Keon Ellis. I mean, what hasn't been said about Keon Ellis? Just the fantastic story that he is, the amazing hustle and resiliency that he's shown throughout his young career to this point, and the winning basketball player that he is. If you were to watch Keon Ellis play basketball without any context of his story and how he's gotten to where he's at, you would think he was a lottery pick, and he's someone who's been a main feature of the Sacramento Kings or in an NBA team for his entire career, for the last 5-6 years. But I think Keon wears his story with pride, and I know Sacramento Kings fans certainly respond to that story with a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, love, and appreciation because of how Keon got to where he is today and how he continues to get better and push his ceiling higher and higher and higher because he has not changed who he is or how he plays now that he has gotten to this point in his career. Tonight, Keon Ellis, 27 points, 10 of 14 from the field, 7 of 11 from three-point range, 5 rebounds, 1 steal, and 2 blocks, leading the way to the Sacramento Kings 119-111 victory over the New Orleans Pelicans. Keon is the kind of guy that you remember in grade school or in high school, you'd have those motivational posters up on the wall where it shows some kind of image. And then it'd say like one word underneath it. It would be like resilience or kindness or perseverance or whatever, and show a picture of either like some iconic member of history, some celebrity, or maybe just some here's a picture of a penguin for some reason. I have this image in my head of a poster of Keon Ellis up in a locker room or in a classroom or in an office somewhere, and it just says hustle, right? The man just hustles. It's what he does. He hustles. He's hustled to get to this point, hustled to even get his NBA opportunity, hustled every opportunity that he's gotten, including the game that kind of put him on Mike Brown's radar last season when the Kings were getting blown out by the Houston Rockets, and he comes in garbage time, plays the right way, earns more opportunity, and has just continued to hustle and hustle and hustle and hustle and hustle all the way up to this point here tonight, where this isn't even his best game of the season, right? Remember, he had a 30-point game earlier on this season where he rained down, I can't even remember, like 9 threes or something in that game. But Keon consistently is impacting winning. And when the Kings are playing their best basketball, you are consistently seeing Keon Ellis on the floor as a part of it, right? He is the epitome of how hustle can carry you through life and how hustle can put you in a position where you succeed and can turn even the unlikeliest of players into what Keon Ellis is today, a very highly impactful player on a team that has ambitions of winning and being successful. There are 3 qualities of Keon Ellis that I love the most. Number 1 is his fearlessness, right? The dude is fearless, especially as a shooter. right? If he stands on the perimeter, he knows his job offensively is to catch and shoot. He just waits, picks his opportunities. When the ball touches his hands, if it's the right decision, he lets it fly. And that's been consistent throughout his time here in Sacramento, whether it was Mike Brown coaching, Doug Christie coaching, whoever. He has had the green light. Offensively, he is best suited to help space the floor and knock down those threes that the Kings are going to generate for him. And it's gotten to a point now where defenses are afraid to leave him. And we even saw moments in this game where they aggressively closed out on him because they knew he had the hot hand. He was in the corner, received a kick out pass. I can't remember from who. The closeout comes right at him. He pump fakes, goes by, and then as the defender comes over to help, the secondary defender comes over to help, he had a running floater on the baseline. Right, the confidence that Keon Ellis is playing with, number one, is fantastic. But the fearlessness that he plays with, especially offensively, is really exciting to see. Number two is his quick hands. Right, he's one of the number one players in the league in deflections. Right, I think he's a top 10 or maybe even top 5 in deflections in the NBA. Like, he's everywhere deflecting the basketball. And the amount of times you see him, whether it's someone attacking him, driving on him, whatever, he just gets his hand in there to disrupt, knock the ball loose, or have an offensive player mishandle the ball so they can't go up into their motion or they can't cleanly execute what they're trying to execute. That's so difficult to do, right? You see those slow-mo replays of players that gather to go up for layups or go up for dunks, and they gather with two hands and kind of put the ball in their lap or right in front of them to start their upward motion. And you see players see it, recognize it, and just put their hands and swipe it away. It's something like Chris Paul has made a career out of. Chris Paul is brilliant at just poking those balls away and swiping the gathers away. And Keon is a master of it. So his quick hands are phenomenal. And then finally, his fluidity. And what I mean by that is that Keon Ellis is the same type of player no matter who he's playing with or what part of the game he's playing in. Right? He fluidly fits in with the flow of the game. If he's getting a lot of shots like he did tonight because of how the defense is reacting, he'll step into that role. If he's not shooting a lot but has to put his head down and just be a pest on the defensive end, he provides that, right? If he's playing a bunch of minutes or playing stretch minutes, if he's closing the game out or if he's playing early minutes in the fourth quarter to set up those closing lineups, Keon Ellis plays the same way. With the starters, with the bench, a combination of the two, it does not matter. The fluidity of which Keon Ellis plays with is fantastic. And now the Kings have to, not to put like a negative on something, but the Kings have to be aware of the fact that the brighter Keon shines, and the Kings are going to need him to shine as bright as he possibly can if they want to make have any chance at making any kind of playoff run this season. The brighter he shines, the more the NBA takes notice. And I'm not talking about national media or people like that giving him credit and giving him props, but the more teams take notice and go, oh, this Keon Ellis guy is really, really good. We would love to have Keon Ellis on our roster. Keon is maybe the best contract in the NBA right now. I mean, he makes $2.1 million this season. Next year, he has a $2.3 million team option. The Kings are going to pick that up, right? Paying $2 million for a guy that arguably should be a starter, one of your most impactful winning players on your roster. That's tremendous value. So the Kings are going to have him for sure the rest of the season, of course, and then they're going to pick up his option for next season. But after that, he's an unrestricted free agent, which means the Kings don't have the power to match and force him to stay. He can go wherever he wants. This is all according to Spot Track. So he, at 27 years old, which is right in the thick of his prime, will be an unrestricted free agent. The Sacramento Kings can't forecast a year and a half, 2 years from now, Keon departing and freak out and be worried about it. You want to live in the moment, of course, but Keon is working himself into a position where it feels like becoming a starter is inevitable. And making him a starter and then paying him starting level money or offering him a starting caliber player contract. We're talking more money than even Malik Monk is making. Monk is also one of the best team contracts in the league. That might be the route to keeping Keon long term. Because while I won't go as far as to say he's the most important player on this roster, I still think that's Domantas Sabonis with everything that Sabonis does. Keon is 100% one of the most important, one of the most impactful players on this roster, and there's no reason to believe that that's going to stop or slow down. So Kings have to be aware that as great as Keon is, right, there's limitations to the length of time that he's going to be here. And the Kings have to be very aware of every other team in the league looking at Keon and going, yeah, we want that. Right? The Boston Celtics right now would love to have Keon Ellis on their roster, even as defending champs. So the Kings got to be aware, and Kings got to keep an eye out for that. I have a good note and a bad note for tonight, and I'm intentionally putting them together because I don't want people to think that I'm being overly negative. The bad note is, and this is something that I've felt like with this Kings team all season, the Kings lose big leads too quickly. Tonight, they led by 16 points in the first quarter. They were up 31-15 at the 3:17 mark of the first quarter. By the end of the quarter, they were only up 8, 34-26. And then at the 9:12 mark of the second quarter, so less than 3 minutes in to the second quarter, the game was tied at 37. I want to see the Sacramento Kings, and this has been a problem when Fox was here, when Mike Brown was here, whoever. It's been a problem for the Kings all season, even been a problem going back to last season. When the Kings have leads, it seems like they take their foot off the gas, or they just don't sustain them and carry them out as long as they should. They give them back really, really quickly. I understand that basketball is a game of runs, right? It's a cliche we hear over and over again, and it's true, but it's just summing it up or chalking it up to, basketball is a game of runs, the Pelicans are going to make their run. Like, just chalking it up to that, I think, is not lazy, but I think it's like brushing the problem under the rug, or not addressing how the Kings could do a better job at maintaining those leads. Because the way we saw the Kings play the first 7-8 minutes of this game, and then the way they played the final 3 minutes of that first quarter, completely different. And Keon Ellis was a major factor of that. Keon was phenomenal. I think he had 21 points in the first half alone. Was phenomenal out of the gate. As soon as Keon Ellis came out of the game, the Kings looked terrible in that first half. So I would like to see the Sacramento Kings do a better job at maintaining and defending leads. It's still not as big of an issue as the Kings falling behind by double digits early, which thankfully they didn't do tonight. They did it last time they played the Pelicans. That's the biggest, most consistent issue I see with this Kings team, other than defending the three. But that's the defending and protecting big leads and sustaining them. Like, I would kill for a Kings blowout victory at this point. Just blow a team out by 20. It hasn't happened enough. And the Kings have been in positions where they should be blowing teams out, especially teams in the state of the New Orleans Pelicans right now. And they just haven't done a good enough job doing that. So that's the bad note. But the good note from tonight's game, I talked a lot about it after a couple games ago, or a couple nights ago, after the Kings win in Dallas. The Kings did a really good job with their turnovers tonight. It didn't look like they were going to, because they got off to a terrible start again. 8 turnovers in the first quarter for the second straight game. Those 8 turnovers led to 9 Pelicans points, right? So once again, the Kings were doing a terrible job taking care of the basketball. They ended the game with 11 total. So after the first quarter, they only turned the ball over 3 more times. They only turned the ball over 1 total time in the second half. I give Malik Monk a ton of credit for that. And he even joked after the game. He said, like, this was my first game in a while that I haven't had 4 turnovers. So he joked about it a little bit, but I give Monk a ton of credit. The Kings as a whole, a ton of credit. They just were a lot smarter and a lot better with the basketball. And of course, as they get more time and get more comfortable playing together, I think you're going to continue to see that turnover number go down. But the adjustment from how sloppy they were with the ball to start this game to how they played for the remainder of this game, really, really good and worth pointing out and celebrating. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Open Phone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and your personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your call and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring that you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off of your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba for 20% off your first 6 months. Openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. So I guess this is the part of the show where I become a little bit of a Debbie Downer, but I'm trying to be real with y'all. And it's funny, those of you who have been with me on the Locked On Kings podcast over the 8 years that I've been hosting this pod, something like that, I think it's 8 years, know that I used to be the eternal optimist, right? I used to be the blind optimist is what I was labeled. And I don't intend to be overly pessimistic, and that's certainly not my brand, and I certainly don't enjoy it. But what I try to do for you on this podcast is be authentic regardless of the situation, right? I was authentic with Chris Watkins when the Kings were in the midst of that 7-game win streak with Doug Christie as head coach. We were authentically talking about the concern of sustainable success for the Kings, and lo and behold, we hit that big bump in the road that the Kings went through during trade deadline week and even the week before that, right? So I do and say pessimistic things even during optimistic times if I feel authentically about them, or if I get the sense that it is an issue, or in this case that I'm about to talk about, will become an issue. It's not because it does better for content to be negative and hate and being pissed off sells. Like I don't want to feel that way. I've never wanted to feel that way. And I'm not trying to take anything away from this Kings win tonight because it was a really good win. And we'll get back to the positivity in just a second. But I want to talk about my concern of the longevity of success for this version of the Sacramento Kings. Just watching them play, it's been a small sample size. And no matter what, we're getting the whole remainder of this season, whether the Kings make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, play in, whatever. We get the remainder of this season to see this group in action, to see the LaVine and DeRozan part 2 here in Sacramento, to see Malik Monk as the primary point guard, to see Domantas Sabonis in this new role, and Jonas Valanciunas coming off the bench, and blah, 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 blah. So we're going to get time to gather the context that we need. But my gut feeling has been, and as I continue to watch, continues to be, even with wins like tonight, even on a 3-game win streak, I'm not thrilled with the very top of this Kings roster. I'm not thrilled with where this roster is headed and the limitations that I feel that they face. I personally think, while the writing is on the wall, not on the wall, and it's not over and done with 100% going to happen, I feel like it is a likelihood that one of Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan will be on the move this summer. And if that's the case, it's more than likely going to be DeMar DeRozan because of his contract compared to Zach LaVine's contract, right? When you traded for LaVine and the money that he's making, you're stuck with him. You got LaVine for another 2 years after this season. It's not the worst thing on the planet, but we see how much the Kings are paying him. When LaVine and DeRozan are on the floor together, they're both very talented basketball players and had really good moments in tonight's game. We'll go through the positives of what they did tonight in just a second. But I look at how bad the defense is, and I'm not putting that all on them, but there are guys like Keon Ellis, for example, that could be and maybe should be playing starting caliber minutes that can't because DeRozan and LaVine are at that spot. And I understand some of you saying, Matt, why not just have LaVine come off the bench? I know he's expensive, but why not have LaVine come off the bench? I just don't think that's a realistic option. Just like bringing DeMar DeRozan off the bench, I do not believe is a realistic option for Doug Christie and the Kings long term. It feels like this team is offensively and defensively disjointed, clunky. Defensively, they're bad. There's just no other way to put it. They're bad. Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are not good defenders. They're passable at times and have good moments, but overall, they are not good defenders. And offensively, while they both have the chance to be really, really solid, again, it feels clunky. It's very ISO heavy. Very ISO heavy. A lot of ball stopping. I'm hoping that practice time, which the Kings will get during this trade deadline, or during the All-Star break and through at times throughout the remainder of the season, I'm hoping that practice time can help iron out some of these kinks and wrinkles and make things look a little bit smoother. But right now, I would compare the way the Sacramento Kings are playing to like a pickup game. They're a really good pickup game. Don't get me wrong. They're extremely talented basketball players, and Doug Christie has this philosophy of not running plays, just letting them play basketball and play fluid with one another. And they are going to get more comfortable playing together for sure. But the way that these guys play, I just don't think is as smooth or as it coexists as well as it could. I think it's just overall a roster construction issue. It's just that my gut feeling watching this team. I hope I'm wrong, and I think we're trending into a territory where if you're concerned about losing Keon and wanting to keep Keon around long term, starting him might be the best option to, one, keep him, and to, two, have the Sacramento Kings find sustainable success. I'm not there yet. I know a lot of you are. I'm not there yet. But the way Keon is trending and the way he continues just to get better and better and better and better and better, there's no reason to believe that he can't be a starting caliber player for a good team in Sacramento. So I just feel like we are trending towards one of the two of them needing to go to free up time for Keon as a starter, or to bolster the defensive rotation of the Sacramento Kings, or to find just another piece to make this team more cohesive and find more long-term sustainable success. I think this team, as constructed, absolutely can be a playoff team. But I look at this team and I think if they're lucky, or at best, they'll be the Damian Lillard-led Blazers, who made the playoffs year after year after year, and it was great and exciting, and they had great moments, but in reality, they never really went anywhere. And I understand to a lot of Kings fans, that sounds great. We've had playoffs once in the last almost 20 years. I'll take 4 or 5 straight years in the playoffs, even if we lose in the first or second round. I hear you. But at the same time, too, think about how frustrated we were when the Kings made the playoffs 2 years ago and then went through last season and were eliminated. We were really frustrated by just that 1 year of regression, or 1 year of not taking that next step forward. 4 or 5 years of that, especially with DeMar DeRozan probably only being here for 2 or 3 of them, I don't see it working long term. That being said, tonight, and really over the last handful of games, I've really liked what I've seen from DeMar. I think he's been really good. Tonight he had 24 points, another very efficient game. 3 of 6 from three-point range for DeMar. Also had 4 rebounds, 6 assists. DeMar's had 7 threes in the last 2 games. He's had 11 in the last 6 games, and he's shooting 38% from three-point range in the month of February. That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal from DeMar DeRozan. And again, a lot of these threes that DeRozan is getting is not his typical ISO-heavy ball. It's fitting in with the flow of the Sacramento Kings. DeMar is getting more good looks from 3, and he's taking them with more confidence and now knocking them down at a 38% clip, which is extremely respectable. Extremely good. I don't know how sustainable that is for the remainder of this season, but DeMar taking those threes with confidence and knocking those threes down is a really good thing for the Sacramento Kings. And then there's Zach LaVine, who's getting better. Right? He had 23 points tonight, 5 of 14 from the field, so not the most efficient. Did have 7 assists, which I really like. 2 of 8 from three-point range, not great. He continues to really struggle as a three-point shooter after shooting 44% for the Bulls this season. But keep shooting. Right? The one thing that you don't want to see LaVine do is to stop shooting threes, and I don't think he's going to. So keep shooting through it, Zach. And I do really like 2 aspects of what LaVine has shown here in Sacramento. Number 1 is getting to the foul line. He was 11 of 11 from the foul line tonight. He's doing a really good job attacking the basket and drawing fouls, even when that three-point shot isn't falling. You love to see that. And I do love Zach's willingness to be a passer and to get his teammates involved on a new team. There are actually times, though, that I want Zach to be a little more selfish. He had 7 assists tonight, but be a little more selfish. Some of his turnover issues that he's had over the first handful of games here in Sacramento have been because he was trying to force a pass to Domas or force a pass to somebody to get them more involved. I'd almost rather see him just try and go up through contact, try and score at the rim, and If he misses, so be it. If he doesn't, there's a good chance he'll get fouled. But I love these seven assists from Zach LaVine, and I love his willingness to try to get his teammates involved. I think that's a really good sign with him coming to this new team with the amount of weapons that he has here in Sacramento. I want to give a shout out to, in my opinion, one of the bravest men on the planet. That's Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles, who drew a charge from Zion Williamson going full freaking speed, and then a few minutes later, nearly drew another, put his body on the line. His heel was just barely on the restricted zone circle underneath the basket. So it was reviewed and then called a blocking foul. But Trey Lyles putting his body on the line twice with an absolute freight train like Zion coming downhill at you, it takes a lot of cojones to be able to do that. A lot. Certainly no, I would die. Like Zion would hit me, I would fly 40 feet backwards like an old cartoon, and my spine would break in half. Like that is a monster of a man coming at you. And you'll see a lot of players go into position to take a charge, not just from Zion, but from anybody. And you see them kind of clench up or turn their shoulder to take the hit or move in a way that it's not a charge, it's a blocking foul. They don't fully put their body on the line. And it's natural, right? I don't blame a player for cringing or turning when they're about to get hit. I would too. But for Trey Lyles to take two charges or two hits directly to the chest from Zion going downhill within a short span of each other, props to you, Trey Lyles. Good on you for doing that. Maybe not the best long-term career decision, but I know Doug Christie and the Kings really appreciated that. The Kings didn't waste time after this game was over making a move. According to Shams, the Kings have signed Markelle Fultz. The Kings looking to address that backup point guard position. Now, earlier in the day, or maybe it was yesterday, the Kings assigned Devin Carter to Stockton, to the G League. I think it's the right move. Look, Devin Carter's not ready. Whether it's because of his injury, the type of player that he is, whatever, Devin Carter's not ready. Just looking at him play, he's had good moments. He's not ready. And hopefully his time in Stockton can kind of get the rust off, get him more comfortable, have him work on some things, especially like his offensive game and that jump shot. I don't know. He's just not ready for the position that the Sacramento Kings are in right now, especially with the lack of overall guard depth, point guard depth, ball handler depth that they have. So they bring in Markelle Fultz, who is a name that we talked about a little bit here on Locked On Kings, a name that made a lot of sense for the Kings. I really like this move for Fultz. Former number 1 overall pick. We know his career has not gone nearly as it was supposed to when he was drafted into the NBA. The offense is suspect. The offense is a little concerning. He's not going to be someone that offensively is going to move the needle too much for the Sacramento Kings, at least from what I believe on this team. But defensively, he's really solid, right? He was a very good defensive, impactful player with the Orlando Magic for the few seasons that he was over there. So I like this pickup for the Kings. I think he bolsters their perimeter defense for sure. Takes a lot of pressure, not all of it, but a lot of pressure off of Malik Monk as the only primary ball handler that the Sacramento Kings have. Plus, he takes the responsibility heavily off the shoulders of Zach LaVine, for example, to be the ball handler when Malik Monk gets a rest. I'm realistic. There's a reason why Markelle Fultz is a free agent and was available. So I'm not expecting this to be a massive game changer for the Sacramento Kings. Does it help the Kings? In my opinion, absolutely it does. And I'm looking forward to seeing him and getting those 10 or so minutes a night when Malik is off the floor. I think he's going to work. I think it'll help. I think it'll be a not necessarily seamless transition or anything like that, but I think you're going to notice Markelle Fultz being a difference maker for this Kings team. I'm looking forward to seeing him in action, and I think he gives Doug Christie some good and needed point guard depth. So the Sacramento Kings are now facing a potential double dose of great vibes heading into the All-Star break in San Francisco. The Kings will be playing tomorrow night again in New Orleans against the Pelicans, looking for their 4th straight win to head into All-Star break with. Some great momentum. That would be fantastic. But also, the Kings are looking to complete a 4-0 sweep of the New Orleans Pelicans. Why is that a big deal? Well, y'all remember last year? You remember going 0-6 against the Pelicans last year? Now, of course, this version of the Pelicans, very different from that version of the Pelicans, of course. The Pelicans have just had a brutal year injury-wise. But still, that would be a nice turnaround. It would be a breath of fresh air to beat that team 4 times after what happened 6 times last season. So the Kings have a chance to pull off the season sweep, bring a 4-game win streak into that All-Star break. Just please, I talked about this after the Dallas game. Please, please, please do not fall into the same trap of the getaway game, Cancun on 3, 1-2-3 Cancun. That kind of, we can't wait just to get on the plane and go home type attitude on when they play. I understand they're exhausted. I understand they're looking forward to that break for sure. But I do not want to see the Kings lay an egg in this game simply because they're tired and they're ready to get that break. Because, again, these wins matter a ton with the playoff race that they're about to be in the Western Conference. And I think Deuce Mason brought this up on the postgame tonight. I'm double checking just to make sure. I'm pretty sure the Jazz are playing the Lakers right now. And the Lakers are playing their final game before the All-Star break. Yes, they just finished. The Jazz beat the Lakers 131-119 tonight. The Lakers did not play their best because they have All-Star break and some relaxation a little bit. And for like LeBron and stuff, company, they have the All-Star game themselves. They have all that on the mind, right? You see a lot of good teams lose these games before the All-Star break simply because they're just ready to get to the break. Kings just need to handle business. Just get the job done. Get that 4 straight win streak going into the break. Get that 4-0 sweep of the Pelicans done. Then relax. Get some much-needed practice time and get ready for a nuts race in the West over the final third of this season. I'm going to end this podcast with a question that I'm not going to answer until a future Locked On Kings podcast, probably later on this week, but a question for you. Has Doug Christie done enough to earn having his interim tag removed, to just be named the head coach of the Sacramento Kings going forward? I want to know your answer. Hit me up on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments section below. I'll leave you with this little tease for my future conversation. My hesitation with naming Doug as the full-time head coach has nothing to do with Doug and everything to do with this current front office, their job security, and a pattern of mistakes when it comes to the hiring of head coaches by this ownership group and this organization. I'll talk more about that on a future episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. My name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.